The scorching African sun beat down mercilessly, casting long shadows across the vast savanna. The distance, a lone figure emerged from the shimmering heat haze, his weathered face etched with lines of experience and determination. This was no ordinary day on the plains. It was the beginning of an extraordinary tale that would challenge everything we thought we knew about the laws of nature and the bonds between sworn enemies. Michael Harris, a seasoned ranger with over 2 decades of experience, navigated his battered green Jeep along a dusty track cutting through the golden grasslands. The familiar sense of dry earth and animal musk filled the air, a constant reminder of the daily struggle for survival that played out in this unforgiving wilderness. His calloused hands rested lightly on the steering wheel, eyes constantly scanning the horizon for any signs of movement. Despite years of witnessing both the brutality and beauty of the savanna, Michael remained ever vigilant. His binoculars lay within easy reach on the passenger seat, and his fingers occasionally brushed against the reassuring presence of the tranquilizer gun, a tool he hoped he'd never need to use, but always kept close at hand. The steady rumble of the Jeep's engine was suddenly interrupted as Michael slammed on the brakes, sending a cloud of dust billowing around the vehicle. His keen eyes had caught a flicker of movement in the distance, something that set off every instinct honed by years in the field. Grabbing his binoculars, he focused on the spot, his breath catching in his throat as the scene came into sharp focus. There, amidst the swaying grass, a heart-wrenching drama was unfolding. A lion cub, no more than a few months old, lay trapped in the crushing embrace of a massive African rock python. The snake's muscular coils, as thick as a man's thigh, tightened relentlessly around the helpless creature. The cub's pitiful cries grew weaker with each passing second, its small chest heaving in a desperate struggle for air. Michael's chest tightened as he watched, torn between his instinct to intervene and his training as a ranger. He knew all too well the dangers of interfering with nature's course. A misplaced tranquilizer dart could prove fatal to the cub, and startling the python might only cause it to constrict harder, sealing the young lion's fate. With trembling hands, he gripped the tranquilizer rifle, his mind racing as he weighed his options. Just as he was about to make a decision, a flicker of movement caught his eye. Michael froze, his gaze fixed on a new player entering this deadly tableau. A hyena emerged from the tall grass, its shoulders hunched and eyes glinting with an intensity that seemed out of place. Normally, these opportunistic scavengers would hang back, waiting for a chance to steal a meal. But this hyena's behavior was anything but normal. Instead of circling with greedy anticipation, the hyena stood stock still, its gaze locked on the python and its helpless prey. Michael frowned, peering intently through his binoculars. There was something in the hyena's eyes that defied explanation. Not the usual cunning or hunger, but something that looked almost like ... concern. Before Michael could process what he was seeing, the hyena sprang into action. With a ferocious snarl, it launched itself at the python, sinking its powerful jaws into the snake's scaly hide. The python thrashed violently, hissing in fury as it coiled even tighter around the cub. Undeterred, the hyena attacked again and again, biting and clawing at the snake's body with a savage desperation that left Michael stunned. Here, before his very eyes, was a sight that defied everything he thought he knew about the natural order. A hyena, one of the lion's most hated enemies, was risking its own life to save a cub it should have seen as nothing more than an easy meal. Michael's pulse raced as he watched the battle unfold, scarcely daring to believe what he was witnessing. But nature, in its cruel indifference, rarely grants happy endings. Despite the hyena's valiant efforts, the python's grip proved too strong. A sickening crack echoed across the grassland, and the cub's small body went limp, its golden eyes closing for the last time. Michael lowered his binoculars, a lump forming in his throat as the harsh reality of the savanna reasserted itself. The midday sun blazed on, indifferent to the tragedy that had just played out. The victorious python coiled protectively around its lifeless prize, while the hyena staggered back, panting heavily with foam flecking its muzzle. But there was no triumphant snarl, no attempt to claim the carcass. Instead, Michael saw something in the hyena's dark eyes that he never thought possible, a glimmer of what could only be described as sorrow. What happened next left Michael questioning everything he thought he knew about these complex creatures. Instead of slinking away in defeat, the hyena approached the python once more. With surprising gentleness, it clamped its powerful jaws around the cub's body, still wrapped in the snake's coils, and lifted it from the ground. The weight was clearly immense, straining the hyena's wiry frame, but it stood firm. He had seen many extraordinary things during his years in the wild, but nothing could have prepared him for what was unfolding before his eyes.
Ow.
The hyena wasn't eating the cub, it was carrying it, with a sense of purpose that seemed to defy explanation. For nearly an hour, under the merciless African sun, Michael tracked this strange procession. The hyena trudged onward, its burden slowing its progress but never breaking its resolve. It navigated through tall grasses and across dry riverbeds, each step seeming guided by some unseen force. Michael felt as though he was witnessing something sacred, a ritual that transcended the usual laws of predator and prey. As they crested a small rise, Michael spotted a sight that made his blood run cold. A pride of lions in the distance. Two males with magnificent dark manes stood guard, while a pair of lionesses lounged nearby, their sharp eyes constantly scanning for threats. The air crackled with tension as Michael realized the full gravity of the situation. A lone hyena approaching a pride while carrying one of their cubs was tantamount to a death sentence. Michael braced himself for the inevitable carnage, his knuckles white as he gripped the binoculars. But the violence he expected never came. Instead, he watched in awe as the hyena slowed its approach, each step careful and deliberate. With infinite gentleness, it lowered the lifeless cub to the ground before the pride. Then took a step back, its head bowed in a gesture of submission. The lion's reaction defied all expectations. There was no charge, no snarling attack. Instead, they stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the small, still form of the cub. One of the lionesses padded forward, her powerful body trembling as she sniffed at her lost child. Her gaze flickered between the cub and the hyena, a mix of grief and confusion evident in her eyes. An eerie silence fell over the savannah, unlike anything Michael had ever experienced. It wasn't the tense quiet before a hunt, or the calm before a storm. This was a silence of shared mourning, a moment where the age-old enmity between lions and hyenas seemed to dissolve in the face of a greater truth. Michael lowered his binoculars, his mind struggling to process what he was witnessing. Everything he thought he knew about predator and prey, about the ruthless nature of survival in the wild, seemed to crumble in that instant. Hyenas were supposed to be opportunists, thieves, the eternal enemies of the noble lion. Yet here was one that had chosen not to take, but to give, to return a lost child to its family, even at great personal risk. The lioness gently nuzzled the cub's still form, a low, mournful sound rumbling in her chest. The male lions stood watch, their tails swishing slowly, but made no move toward the hyena. In their eyes, Michael saw a flicker of something he never thought possible, a grudging respect, perhaps even gratitude. The hyena remained for a moment longer, its shoulders sagging with exhaustion, before turning and padding slowly back into the tall grass. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the savannah in deep golds and reds, Michael sat motionless in his jeep, overwhelmed by what he had witnessed. His heart was heavy with both awe and sorrow. He knew that this day would stay with him forever, a stark reminder that there were truths in nature far beyond human understanding, truths of grief, respect, and of unexpected connections that transcended species. The fading light found Michael still sitting in silent contemplation, his mind replaying the day's events in an endless loop. The python's deadly embrace, the cub's final moments, the hyena's burden, and the lion's solemn vigil. Each image was seared into his memory. He realized then that the wild was not just a place of violence and survival, but a complex tapestry of relationships and behaviors that humans were only beginning to comprehend. As darkness fell and the first stars began to twinkle in the vast African sky, Michael finally turned his jeep back toward camp. He carried no physical evidence of what he had seen, no photographs, no recordings, but the weight of the experience was etched into his very soul. He knew that his story would be met with disbelief by many, too fantastic to be accepted without proof. But he also knew the truth of what he had witnessed, a truth that challenged everything he thought he understood about the natural world. Parking his jeep outside the ranger's hut, Michael stepped out into the cool night air. The savannah stretched out before him, a dark expanse teeming with hidden life and untold stories. As he gazed up at the star-filled sky, he whispered softly to himself, his words carried away by the gentle breeze. They said hyenas only take. Today I saw one give.